Good morning. Today in disaster management, we are going to learn about landslides and its management. Okay, so let's understand first what is landslide. Landslide is basically, movement or down movement of land or land mass down the slope. Okay, so and why it is a disaster. Okay, so landslide is one of the major disasters in our country that we face, and if you see, most of the hilly terrain are more vulnerable to landslides. So let's first just go through the brief of what is disaster, and then we will come to landslides. So, disaster is a sudden calamitous event bringing great damage, loss, and destruction to life and property. And as per the United Nations defines disaster as the occurrence of sudden or major misfortune which disrupts the basic fabrics of normal functioning of a society or a community. Now, what are the various classifications of disaster? Natural disasters and man-made disaster. Natural being earthquake, avalanche, tsunami, thunderstorms, tornado, cyclone, volcanic eruption, floods, are all natural disasters. So among which, landslide is also a natural disaster. Man-made disasters are like nuclear disasters, chemical disaster, biological disaster, oil spill, soil pollution, terrorism, technical accidents are all man-made disaster. But in between, we have a human-induced disasters also. That is because when a human activity or anthropogenic activity triggers occurrence of any natural disasters like landslide and avalanches predominantly have a very close relationship with anthropogenic activities of resulting into a catastrophic event. Okay, so, talking about that, so the term landslide includes all varieties of mass movements of hill slope, and can also be defined as downward and outward movement of land mass slope, forming a material composed of rocks and soil and combinations of all the material along the surface of separation by falling, sliding, and following either slow or quickly from one plane to another. Okay, then we have landslides are natural as well as man-made. So not man-made, you can say it human-induced. Okay, man-induced hazard when they occur in uninhabited areas, but becomes a disaster when they strike a populous areas. Okay, so landslide is a sudden and rapid downslope movement of mass of rocks soil under the influence of gravity. So, where mountain slopes are steep, there is a possibility of a large, disastrous landslides. Okay, so landslide is also called as landslip. The movement of downslope of mass of rocks, debris, earth, or soil is a mixture of all these materials are also called landslides. And landslides occurs when gravitational and other types of shear stress within the slope exceeds the shear strength of the of the material from the slope is crossing. Okay, so the shear stress can be built up within a slope by a number of processes. Okay, so these includes over steep opening of of the base of a slope, which as by natural erosion or evacuation or excavation, loading of slopes such as influence of water, but like heavy precipitation or rain-fed areas will have shear stress will be exceeding the shear strength of the slope. So a rise in the groundwater table can also result in it, or accumulation of debris on a slope surface can also result into landslide. So the short term stress such as those imposed by earthquakes and rainstorms, can likely contribute to active landslides. So landslides can be activated by processes that weakens the shear strength of the slope materials. Okay, so shear strength is dependent mainly on two factors, that is frictional strength, which is the resistance to the movement between the slope materials interacting continuously, particulates, and cohesive strength, which is the bonding between the particulates. Coarse particles such as sand, grain have high friction strength but low cohesive strength. Areas with positive side opposite is basically is true for clay, which are composed of fine particulates. And another factor that affects the shear strength of slope forming materials is the space and decomposition of its constituent. Okay, constituent particles, now referred to as sediment fabrics. Sometimes materials with a loose open sediment fabrics will weaken if they are mechanically distributed or flowed with the water. And an increase in water content also results from either natural cause or human activities, typically weakens the sandy material through the reduction of interparticle friction, and can weaken the clay through the dissolution of interparticle sediments. The hydration of clay minerals and the elimination of the interparticulates, that is the capillary, will increase the tension on the slope. So it will increase the tensional strength. Okay, so landslides can be classified. There are few classifications of landslide, like falls, that is downward from the topographic hills. Then slide, that is the mass slips down and outward. Flow, that is mass behaves like a fluid flowing down the hill. And subsidence, that is when the land collapses. Okay, so the fall happens when the large chunk of material, they fall off, get separated from the main topography, and it falls off. Sliding is when these chunks, they roll down the slope. Okay, they slip down the slope, that is the sliding. Then flow is when there is large amount of mud and soil which is there, with mixed with water content, moreover will act like a fluid and it will flow down the hill. And subsidence happens when there is dissolution which is happening under the surface, and it happens in most of the areas which is karst like land features have the subsidence type of land slides. Okay, the cause of landslides. So there are natural causes and there are human induced or man-made causes. Natural causes are like gravity, geological structure, intense rainfall, volcanic eruption, earthquake, or forest fire can result into landslides. Man-made causes are deforestations. Okay, irrigation, when you then you have mining activities and artificial any artificial vibration that can happen, that when while you are constructing road or you're drilling through the hills, they will create a vibration among the solid particulates, and which can trigger landslides. So again, coming to the types of landslides, landslides are generally classified by movements, that is slide, flow, and spread, or topple or fall. Okay, so the type of material, that is the material that falls, that is whether it is a rock, it is debris, or it is soil, that depends, that will give you whether it is going to slide, or it is going to flow, or it is going to topple or fall off the feature. So sometimes more than one type of movement occurs within a single landslide, and because the temporal and the spatial relationship of these movement are often complex, their analysis often requires detailed interpretation of both landforms and geological sections or cores. That is the rock slide and any other type of slides involve the displacement of the material along one or more discrete shear surfaces. So the sliding can extend downward and outward along the borderline and the plans of the surface. Okay, so it can be rotational along the concave upper set of the shear, or shear of the surface. It can be like this when the surface is like this, and it can fall like this. It can make a curve like this, concave curve like this. All right. Or or that is, you can call it slump, the land slumming down. Okay, or slogging down. Or you can call it a transitional landslide. Typically takes place along the structural features, which is like bedding planes, when things just starts falling off, like a domino when it falls off. Okay. Or resistant block rocks are weakened and overlie on the one to and it keeps on toppling onto one another materials. A transitional landslide is sometimes also called as mudslide when it occurs along a gentle slope. Okay, so the discrete shear planes of a fine gradient rock, that is the displacement of the mass is influenced by an increase in poor water pressure in rotational side, the axis of the rotation. Now, though the parallel of the contours of the slope and the movement near the head of the slide is largely downward and exposing a steep headward scarp among the movement within the displaced mass. Okay. So now, coming back to the causes, the natural causes of landslide are like gravity. When gravity works more effectively on a steeper slope, but more gradual on a slope. More slower on a gradual slope, and may also be vulnerable. Geological factors, like many slides occur in geological setting that place permeable sand and gravel above permeable layer of silt and clay, or bedrock. Water seeps downward through the upper material and accumulate on the top of the underlying unit, forming a zone of weakness. Now, heavy prolonged rainfall. Water is common in primary factor that triggers landslide. So whenever there is a heavy rainfall, what happens is it seeps into the gaps, and it dissolute the material that it can dissolve and washes away. So then the joints, they get weakened, and with because it is on the slope, so the gravity also is continuously pulling it towards downwards, and hence it starts moving downwards. Then we have earthquake. So earthquake is also when earth is vibrating, it is shaking. It loosens the hinges, or the interlocking of the rock materials and the soil materials, so that also makes things start toppling off the slopes. So earthquake, any time plate tectonic move, the soil that covers the covers move with it. Okay. So within earthquake occurs, and on an area with steep slope, many times this soil slip cause landslides. Okay. So furthermore, debris flow caused by earthquake can also be triggered by mass movement of the slope soil. Okay. Then we have forest fire. Forest fire is like cause soil and induce flood in landslide due to the destruction of the natural vegetation. So if there is a natural top vegetation, when it is removed, it is more prone to erosion. So whenever there is a heavy rainfall, it will have to have happen that the soil will have nothing to get, connected together, or be holding up to anything, and hence with the slightest external push, it will come down. Okay. Then we have volcanoes. The condition commonly prevail after volcanic eruption. The kill and that kills the top vegetation over extensive areas, and spread loose volcanic rocks over landscape. So during the subsequent rainy season, the swollen river will erode the new deposit and sometimes generate lahars that are dangerous for people down the streams. So what happens in volcanoes is, like, there's a very recent example also, like Mount Helena. When Mount Helena exploded, it created a massive downflow of the volcanic cloud coming the slope. So volcanic clouds have ashes that is also mixed with it, and which comes down along with it. When it mixed with water bodies and water material and precipitation, if it happens, it becomes a concrete slurry which flows. And this, the concrete type of slurry, which is made of volcanic ashes and cloud, when it flows down like a river, it is called lahars. Lahars is very high in temperature. It has a very hot all by itself. It has a strength, and it is so dense that it can uproot any infrastructure which is there on its path. So it has a very devastating effect, and this lahar movement can cause a lot of destruction to property and even human life, or even ecological disbalance can happen due to that. Okay, just hold on. Okay. So now we are going to learn is the anthropogenic factors. The anthropogenic factors which work in landslide is the human actions, most notably those that affects the drainage or groundwater can trigger landslides. And inappropriate drainage system, change in slope, landslide, use pattern, deforestation, agricultural practice on steep slope, cutting and deep evacuation on slope of buildings, roads, canals, and mining. Inappropriate disposal of debris after evacuation are examples of you know anthropogenic factors that affects landslides. Okay. Now, main soil variables affected by the landslides. So, affected soil, the soil, that is physical property of the soil. It is the structure, the bulk, and the density of the the soil, the water permeability. They all affect the the main the condition that the factors that affects the landslides. The loss of functions, soil functions, in that, and increase of soil value vulnerability of other, also threats the factors like soil erosion, soil organic matter decline, then compaction. That is a major driving factors, like compaction happens due to overgrazing, when the cattles, they keep compacting the soil or topsoil over and over again. So where does it mostly occurs? So landslide mostly occurs on the steep slope, or that is typically found along the shoreline, where centuries of waves of river currently have eroded the toe of the slopes. So most steep slopes experience landslides, and on then you have on the benches, like relatively level benches on the otherwise steep slope often indicates an area of a past slope movement. Okay. So where drainage is causing a problem, that landslides are often triggered by the failure of a drainage system. So large amount of water flowing from a driveways, roof areas, or roads, and other impermeable surface can cause landslides. Okay. So if you see, the more what happens is, because these are the driveways, roads, and roofing, they are impermeable surface, so they make the other surface, which is more exposed to the elements of erosion, will fall weak, and will not have the sheer strength to hold the soil, and hence will result into erosion will start happening. And when it starts cutting from the sides, it will result into subsidence, and fall, and flow of the soil from there, causing a landslide. So, where certain geological conditions exist, landslides occur where certain combinations of soil are present. So, when layers of sand, gravels lie above less permeable silt and clay layers, that is groundwater, can accumulate, and zone of weakness can develop from there. Okay. So these are the pictures which shows this landslide. So now if you see, here they are in hilly areas. This is a landslide had happened. Some, because of the heavy rainfall, what is happening here? The feature which was here was completely washed up, because this is full of material, such soil materials, that when heavy rainfall came, it dissolved the most of the material and started flowing it with along with it. So that's why this was entirely corroded away or washed away by the water. Okay. Similarly, this is a debris which is again flowing from the top of the hills. Again, this is again a debris which is flowing from the top of the hill, because of the loose big gravels. If you see, they are flowing down the hill. and it becomes more dangerous when it starts affecting the populous areas. So now if you see, this is that this type of landslide, this is the subsidence that has happened. Land has been, eroded from beneath the surface of the, house which was standing once here. It is eroded away. So now this house is very vulnerable, and it will result into, this house will immediately obviously fall off if anybody tries to reside here. So what can it what we can do is, like, before constructing anything, we should always have a soil test. See whether it is the soil, how much deep you can, put your the base of the house, and well, depending on the type of the soil, you can use materials and structure that is more resilient to earthquakes and landslides and hailstorms. So there are certain building norms that can be followed to prevent such incidences from happening. Because if this is a, recurring incident that keeps happening, it will result into great loss. Not only it is a threat to life, it is a, loss as a property also, because a person builds up, spends quite a lot of economy in building a infrastructure, whether it is your house or it is, a government infrastructure, like, powerhouse or hospitals or anything else. It will eventually result into a loss in economy. Okay. Then we have landslides in India. Landslides are one of the natural hazards that affects the 15% of the total area of our country. So it is, we call it natural hazards, but it has a human induced effect nowadays. Okay. So it is, the hilly areas are more prone to landslides. So it is pertaining to about 15% of the total area in our country is prone to landslide, which exceeds about 0.49 million square kilometers. So landslide is different types are, frequent in geonomical activity domain in Himalayas and, and other northeastern belt parts of belts of, our country, where the relatively in a stable domain of, Meghalaya plateau and western ghats of Nilgiri hills are prone to landslides. So for a long time, landslides have, disastrous consequences, causing enormous economic losses and affecting the social fabrics. In, 2005 alone, more than 500 human lives were lost due to hazards in our country. So this is a map which shows the areas which is highly affected by landslides. So the Union Territory of Jammu, Kashmir, and Ladakh is here. Then you have Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand. Then West Bengal, basically North West Bengal predominantly is very prone to landslide. Even the Sundarban region of West Bengal is prone to landslide, because it is, this type of soil which is there. It is, very vulnerable to the wash off that happens whenever there's a rise of, river water or the ocean water. And the mangroves are, alarmingly getting, washed away or is shrinking. So that's why it is these areas are getting vulnerable to landslides. Then you have northeastern states like Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Meghalaya, Manipur are, sorry, not Meghalaya, Manipur, and, Mizoram are highly prone to landslides. Moderately prone landslide regions are Assam and Meghalaya and Tripura. Okay, so these, in seven sister states, we have Assam, Meghalaya, and Tripura being three states that is, moderately prone to landslides. Then again, if you come to Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats, Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, Puducherry, Kerala, and Tamil Nadu are moderately prone to landslides. And Marginally prone to landslide regions are, Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand. And there are, areas which have a very less record of landslides here, like, Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Rajasthan, and Gujarat. But if you see, if you see the particularly if you go to these areas, there also there are certain places which are highly prone to landslides. Like in Rajasthan, you have landslides which is, prone to landslides, like Mount Abu. Mount Abu, that is in falls in the Aravalli range of, hills, and it is prone to landslides. So even in Rajasthan we have landslide prone areas. Even in Gujarat, if you go in Saurashtra region also, you will find areas which are prone to landslides. Madhya Pradesh also, there are Ghat section in the Shivpuri regions which is prone to landslides, like, Dholpur, Shivpuri. These areas are prone to landslides, as the, soil conditions are also very different in these areas. Chhattisgarh also, like Chota Nagpur Plateau and all. Chhattisgarh we have, uh, the central highlands. There also we are having certain places which are, very prone to landslides here. Andhra Pradesh also, in Andhra we have, hills that are prone to landslides. So because, it is not, it is an overgeneral image of the country which is showing the higher frequency of landslides which happens. But there is no place in the country that does not have a region which is not prone to landslides. Now it is happening more and more because of the, increasing human interventions into the natural domain. Okay, now this is a case study of Kinnor, Satluj region, Satluj River. This district is in Kinnauр, located in the northeastern part of the Himachal, and is one of the most remotest district in the states. So the threat of an impending flood in the Satluj due to landslide that kept the resident of Kinnauр and, Shimla district in a, very dicey situation. So on, 26th June 2005, a sudden exceptional rise in the level of the Parichu River that, merges in the Satluj. It is one of the tributaries of Satluj, and that in the Indo-Tibetan region had risen the level of water. So, which, rise to the level of about 60 feet, to a point that Kinnaur district had to, trunk, dark brown, bringing the, trees and debris all along its courses. So it has, submerged the banks of the Satluj because of the sudden rise of the water. It also, washed away bridges, like 5 bridges was washed away. National highway was instructed, national highway number 22. Okay, then, highway being disrupted, there are, when highway gets disrupted, the logistic to reach those areas, and the, materials that can reach to this far end of the country and the, villages will be also disrupted, hence making people more, what do you call, more vulnerable to falling, what do you call, prey to other abnormalities or other problems that can arise because of it. The relief was like provided, like medical facilities to the victims, whatsoever the victims that had happened. The government had announced about 1 crore of, flood relief measures that was taken up. Flood water, clothes were provided to victims. Essential equipments were made available to the community, like first aids, stretchers, and so on. Damages caused due to floods, that is like 10 major bridges were washed away. 15 government buildings were damaged. There were forest areas which were damaged. There were food, to 14, there was 18 bridges on along the national highway that was also destroyed. Six Chinese, because it is in the Indo-China border, Chinese were washed away to a flash flood in Panchu River, and their bodies were seen floating in the Satluj River in the Kinnaur district. So they washed away. It started happening in the upper reaches, so it washed away Chinese, and uh, bringing out the victim's body into the district. Immediate challenges of the administration was an actual an assessment of the damage, evacuation of the tourists, restoration of the old, Hindustan Tibet road, then running the relief camps to affected villages, distribution of relief, amount of the affected village, reaching out to cut off villages which are, because there were roads and bridges which were completely damaged. So there were segregated villages which were cut off. So relief were given through aerial connections and other ways, other routes that were found. Then pre-flood preparations were also done, strengthening the communication system, education of the village were about the evacuation process and how to evacuate, rescue, and relief equipments were given, stock of essential commodities and medicine, restoration of alternate routes to old Hindustan Tibet road were made. Rehabilitation and reconstruction stage, that allotment of the houses, site to families who have lost their houses. Then then there were small houses which were allotted to each of the 148 affected families. Financial aids were given, along with construction of the houses. Land in exchange of washed away agricultural land being provided to the people of, or the victims were given. Okay, so in all, the hills area are becoming very vulnerable due to the inherent fragility which is there existing, over the exploitation of its resources and overburdening it basically. So it is also add to the social tension, and also breeds what you call anti social activities in those areas. So hence there is a need of hill development authority at a national, state, and other levels that is required to be taken up. So this is all about various landslides, and how we are dealing with landslides, and a case study to tell you about it now. With now, because this is a case study of 2005, since 2005 to today's time, we have come a long way up, in terms of mitigation, in terms of preparedness, in terms of response and rehabilitation and recovery when it comes to landslides. Okay. uh, Again, we are going to meet for a next class. Have a nice day.